I very clearly remember some of the cartoons from my childhood. Every single one that I do remember has been one of a kind. It went beyond being just something fun. In retrospect, it was more about the visuals, the bright, catchy colors, the engaging storyline, well-designed characters, and, more importantly, the moral lessons it gave us. You must admit, cartoons in the olden days were some of the best when it came to teaching children about do's and don'ts and broader life lessons. DuckTales was one such cartoon. Whether you are 3 or 30, DuckTales has something that has no age limit. Welcome back to our YouTube channel, where today we will be discussing DuckTales and how it really ended. September 18th, 1987 is generally recognized as the beginning of DuckTales' syndicated American run, although the exact premiere date varied slightly between television markets. The show demonstrated that a weekday syndicated cartoon could have animation and storytelling strong enough to carry an entire franchise on its back. It was a Walt Disney Television animation production built upon the Duckburg comic mythology, created largely by Carl Banks. It ran for 100 episodes before its final episode aired on November 28, 1990. DuckTales wasn't merely a successful cartoon, it was one of the foundations of Disney's syndicated television animation boom, and helped open the door to larger Disney afternoon era that followed it. But the way it ended was stranger and quieter than many people remember. This is how it happened.
You'll never catch me, coppers.
Rise of DuckTales. DuckTales was developed by Jim Magan, Ted Anasti, and Patsy Cameron, and was one of Disney's first major animated series made specifically for weekday syndication. Magan later explained that Anasti and Cameron handled much of the early development and story editing while he was also occupied with Adventures of the Gummy Bears. My involvement with the development was minimal because I was working on gummies at the time. Ted Anasti and Patsy Cameron were hired to develop and story edit that series, so the bulk of that show was on their shoulders. Jim Magan interview published by Rediscover the 80s. It was Carl Barks's comics that supplied much of the material and mythology for the series. The show follows the fictional city of Duckburg and reuses characters including Donald Duck, Uncle Scrooge, Gyro Gearloose, the Beagle Boys, Magica Dispel, and Flintheart Glomgold, while also creating important new characters of its own. What made the series different was its enormous scale. Disney committed to an initial package of 65 episodes, enough to air one installment every weekday for 13 weeks without a repeat. Overseas animation partners including Tokyo Movie Shinsha and Wang Film Productions helped give parts of the show a more cinematic appearance. That allowed DuckTales to move through science fiction, fantasy, treasure hunting, slapstick, and family comedy without losing its identity. It was comedy adventure done on a global scale. Jim Magan. The premise involved an extremely rich duck called Scrooge McDuck, the richest duck in the world actually, who takes in Huey, Dewey, and Louie when their Uncle Donald Duck joins the United States Navy. Every week the family is pulled into some new adventure around the globe. Such an exciting and intriguing premise was bound to grab viewers' attention, and the series became successful enough for Buena Vista Television to order additional episodes beyond the original 65. The original 1987 series eventually reached a total of 100 episodes, spread across 4 broadcast seasons, with the final episode airing in November 1990. By far, DuckTales was the most popular and successful series. Buena Vista Television even ordered extra episodes, so it topped out at 100 shows. Jim Magan.
The genie in the magic lamp! The fortunes I could own!
Controversy and cost. So what exactly happened to DuckTales? The answer is simpler and less dramatic than one might expect. Considering the scale of the show, one might imagine a controversy, collapsing ratings, or a sudden cancellation. However, no well-documented scandal brought the series down. DuckTales had already achieved a complete and highly valuable 100-episode syndication library. By 1990, Disney was also expanding its television animation slate rather than depending upon a single program. The Disney Afternoon officially launched on September 10, 1990, as a 2-hour syndicated weekday block. DuckTales was joined by shows including Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, and Adventures of the Gummy Bears. Later programs such as Darkwing Duck would expand the block further. DuckTales was therefore no longer required to carry Disney's entire syndicated animation identity by itself. Its final broadcast season contained 7 episodes, although some of those episodes had reportedly been produced as part of an earlier batch and held for later transmission. The 2-part Golden Goose story aired as the final 2 episodes within this period. However, there is no strong evidence that Disney deliberately ended DuckTales because its newer Disney afternoon programs had replaced it. A more cautious explanation is that the show had reached 100 episodes. Disney possessed an enormous rerun package, and the company was investing in an expanding lineup of newer series. The final episode simply aired without the kind of highly publicized farewell that a modern long-running series might receive. There was also the theatrical movie to consider. DuckTales the movie Treasure of the Lost Lamp was released on August 3, 1990, while the television show was still airing. The movie was not a major theatrical success. It earned approximately $18.1 million in cinemas against a commonly reported production budget of around $20 million. That made its theatrical performance disappointing by Disney standards, and reports state that plans for additional theatrical DuckTales films did not proceed. However, the movie later performed much better on home video, reportedly selling approximately 2.3 million VHS copies in the United States. Therefore, it would be too strong to claim that the movie's box office performance single-handedly killed the television program, or caused Disney to discard DuckTales completely. To summarize, DuckTales did not experience one massive crash. It reached 100 episodes, Disney expanded into a larger afternoon block, the movie disappointed theatrically, and the company moved its production resources towards newer programs. In a sadly funny way, DuckTales helped make the Disney afternoon possible, and once that larger programming ecosystem existed, Disney no longer needed to keep producing new DuckTales episodes indefinitely.
This is what the brothers and I have dedicated our lives to.
The penultimate blow, The Golden Goose Part 1. The Golden Goose is the 2-part final story of DuckTales, broadcast on November 27th and 28th, 1990. Part 1, the 99th episode of the series, sets the final disaster in motion. The episode follows the characters discovering a mythical artifact called the Golden Goose, which has the extraordinary power to transform whatever it touches into gold after its power is activated. It can affect objects, places, and living beings. That sets the stage for another DuckTales-level adventure and another wild chase after an invaluable treasure. But every powerful item comes with a price, and so does this one. By the end of the episode, Huey, Dewey, and Louie have been transformed into solid gold statues. It begins with Scrooge encountering Dijon, who attempts to steal his wallet. During the resulting chase, Dijon becomes entangled with a group of monks traveling towards a mysterious temple. He discovers that their leader is his own brother, Poupon, and that the temple protects an immensely powerful ancient artifact. Dijon being Dijon, he obviously steals it after learning that it can create gold. And again, Dijon being Dijon, he carelessly loses it and accidentally drops it inside one of Scrooge's cargo containers. Scrooge and the boys consequently return to Duckburg without realizing that the Golden Goose is traveling with them. Scrooge soon discovers the goose's power and begins transforming parts of his property into gold. Flintheart Glomgold learns about the artifact and sends the Beagle Boys to Scrooge's mansion to retrieve it. During the struggle, the goose turns Scrooge's bedsheet into gold, trapping him inside it. The nephews attempt to stop the Beagle Boys from escaping, but the thieves use the goose against them. Huey, Dewey, and Louie are transformed into gold. Yikes! Now what? This is what makes the final 2 episodes feel worthy of ending the series. Part 1 ends on a painful cliffhanger, and changes the way the show treats Scrooge's obsession with wealth. His love of gold is no longer merely a source of comedy or adventure, it has placed the people he loves most in mortal danger. It's all my fault for being so greedy for gold. Scrooge McDuck, The Golden Goose, Part 2. The story begins placing its moral lesson at the center of the final act. The fantasy of limitless wealth becomes the thing that nearly costs Scrooge everything he loves, his nephews. The final episode, The Golden Goose, Part 2. The Golden Goose Part 2 is the final episode of the original series. It aired on November 28, 1990 as the 7th episode of the 4th broadcast season. Its story was credited to Ken Kuntz, David Weimers, and Alan Burnett, while the teleplay was written by Jeffrey Scott. The complete show had reached 100 episodes. Insane, right? The episode continues where the previous one left off, where the three nephews transformed into gold. Scrooge regrets allowing his greed to endanger them and asks for their forgiveness while they remain frozen as statues. "Can you ever forgive me for what I've done, lads?" Scrooge McDuck, The Golden Goose, Part 2. Poupon informs Scrooge that his nephews can be restored, but the Golden Goose must be recovered before its power escalates beyond control. The goose periodically enters a more dangerous state in which it begins moving on its own and turning everything it encounters into gold. Poupon also possesses sacred water needed to restore the goose to its original condition, although the characters lose access to it during the struggle. Scrooge knows that Glomgold and the Beagle Boys have the artifact, so he immediately prepares to retrieve it. Anything for his nephews, of course. The moment demonstrates that no matter how greedy Scrooge may be and no matter how proud he is of being the world's richest duck, no treasure can replace his family. From there, the events keep escalating. The Golden Goose's power begins spreading across Duckburg. It transforms buildings, vehicles, people, and eventually enormous sections of the world into gold. Glomgold is also transformed, which is rather ironic. Scrooge, Launchpad, Poupon, Dijon, and the others pursue the goose while trying to prevent the transformation from becoming permanent. Scrooge eventually returns it to the temple and uses the sacred water to restore it. The worldwide golden catastrophe is reversed, and Huey, Dewey, and Louie return to normal. The story is a marvelous way for the long-running series to end, even though it may not originally have been designed as a definite final chapter. It does not conclude through Scrooge defeating one final ultimate villain. Instead, it concludes through his realization that family matters more than infinite treasure, a fitting emotional beat for a show built upon the tension between adventure, wealth, greed, and loyalty. Even with all that, the cartoon keeps its comic streak alive. It does not end on a solemn freeze frame. It ends with another chase after Dijon, who steals Scrooge's wallet yet again. Because Dijon will never change.
Duckworth really does need to get
An ending that almost wasn't. Unlike cartoons that simply disappear without resolving their final broadcast story, DuckTales ended with a complete two-part adventure. However, it is important to distinguish between a last episode and a deliberately planned series finale. The Golden Goose Part 2 was the final episode broadcast, and its plot reached a satisfying resolution, but it was not promoted as a giant franchise-ending event, nor did it attempt to provide permanent conclusions for every character. Its emotional lesson makes it feel more conclusive than an ordinary episode, which is why viewers can reasonably treat it as a finale in retrospect. The final broadcast season did contain only 7 episodes. There was no widely documented major farewell campaign, special retrospective, or grand announcement. The episodes simply aired as part of the Disney afternoon and the program concluded. Unlike modern serialized fantasy shows, DuckTales was not built around one continuing story that required every villain, relationship, or mystery to be permanently resolved. The ending therefore does not close every possible adventure or settle the future of every member of the Duck family. What it does conclude neatly is the moral and emotional crisis facing Scrooge. He learns once again that his nephews are worth more than all the gold in the world, while Duckburg remains open enough for the adventures to continue forever in the audience's imagination. Behind the scenes, the cast and Disney Television Animation's fate. Now we come to one of the foundational pillars of animation, voice casting. In an animated series, choosing the cast is enormously important. The actors become part of each character's identity and can define the way audiences hear that character for generations. When it came to memorable performances, DuckTales did an excellent job. Alan Young voiced Uncle Scrooge, delivering both well-timed comedy and genuine warmth. Being Scottish and doing Scrooge McDuck, I was a natural to do DuckTales. Alan Young, Pop Goes the Culture TV. Russi Taylor voiced Huey, Dewey, Louie, and Webby Vanderquack, giving each character a recognizable variation despite performing several of them within the same scenes. Launchpad McQuack was voiced by Terry McGovern. Jim Megan later explained that he and his colleagues recognized similarities between Launchpad and Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China while developing the pilot. I didn't invent Launchpad McQuack, but I was responsible for introducing him in the pilot. Mark, Bruce, and I went to see the film Big Trouble in Little China, 1986, and we realized that the Jack Burton character was Launchpad. Big Ego Jack saw himself as more important and talented than he truly was, and did heroically stupid things. Terry McGovern, the perfect voice for Launchpad, was not recorded as part of our Burbank ensemble. He lived up in San Francisco and was directed via phone at a studio up there. Jim Megan. Mrs. Beakley was voiced by Joan Gerber, while Duckworth, Burger Beagle, and Bouncer Beagle were voiced by Chuck McCann. Hal Smith voiced both Gyro Gearloose and Flintheart Glomgold. Frank Welker voiced Big Time Beagle, Baggy Beagle, and Poupon in the final story. June Foray voiced Magica Dispel and Ma Beagle. Hamilton Camp voiced Fenton Crackshell and Gizmo Duck. Tony Anselmo continued in the role of Donald Duck, which he had assumed in the mid-1980s. Brian Cummings voiced Doofus Drake, while Richard Libertini voiced Dijon. The voice actors did an excellent job bringing the characters to life and making them unforgettable. As mentioned earlier, the show's early development credits include Jim Megan, Ted Anasti, and Patsy Cameron, with Anasti and Cameron performing much of the initial development and story editing work. For portions of the visual quality, we have overseas animation studios such as Tokyo Movie Shinsha and Wang Film Productions to thank. Different studios worked on different episodes, which is one reason the animation quality and style could vary. At its best, however, the movement and staging surpassed much of the competing syndicated television animation of the period. So, what happened to Disney television animation after DuckTales ended? The studio did not fade. Instead, it continued growing through programs including Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, Goof Troop, and many more. In short, DuckTales gave Disney's television animation division vital momentum and helped pave the way for the success of the Disney afternoon. What came next? The franchise's afterlife began before the series had even finished. DuckTales the movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp, was released during the original show's run. Although audiences later embraced it, especially on home video, its initial theatrical return was disappointing compared with its reported production budget. Reports indicate that additional theatrical DuckTales projects did not move forward, but the television franchise itself remained enormously influential. Launchpad McQuack became a regular member of Darkwing Duck in 1991, creating a direct connection between the programs. Darkwing Duck primarily takes place in St. Canard, not Duckburg, but its returning characters, cameos, and shared creative DNA helped establish the broader feeling of an interconnected Disney afternoon world. DuckTales also influenced the adventure comedy approach of programs that followed it. The second major chapter in the franchise's afterlife was the famous 2017 reboot. DuckTales premiered with the one-hour television movie Woo-Oo on August 12, 2017, nearly 30 years after the original syndicated series debuted. It was developed by Matt Youngberg and Francisco Angones, with voice actors including David Tennant, Danny Pudi, Ben Schwartz, Bobby Moynihan, Kate Micucci, and Tony Anselmo. The reboot ran for 3 seasons and 69 half-hour episodes, concluding with a longer final episode on March 15, 2021. It featured a new principal voice cast, modified mythology, and more serialized storytelling, and a different approach to the individual personalities of Huey, Dewey, and Louie. But none of that erased the reputation the original series had built. Unlike many reboots that struggled to justify themselves, this version received substantial critical and audience praise. The revival also expanded through comic books, online shorts, games, and the scripted podcast, This Duckburg Life. Its success was further proof of the original concept's permanence. Matt Youngberg described the reboot's collaborative production process this way: "This show isn't in my voice or Frank's voice. It's the voice of all the writers breaking stories together. Every board artist, designer, director, the cast, we all talk to each other non-stop. That's one of the things I'm most proud of." However, the original show leaves us with one lingering question. If the 1987 series ended with the emotional lesson that family mattered more to Scrooge than gold, why is that ending remembered less vividly than the theme song, The Money Bin, and Scrooge diving into his fortune? It is something to think about indeed.
What did you do?
Well. What a refreshing walk down the path of nostalgia. It brought back a lot of memories for me, and I'm sure it did for you as well. I might have watched DuckTales passionately during my childhood, but I certainly did not realize that it contained 100 episodes. Crazy, honestly. And to think that its final broadcast story was a clean 2-part adventure that happened to provide such a fitting emotional conclusion. It was not necessarily designed or promoted as a permanent grand finale, but the Golden Goose gave Scrooge one final powerful reminder that his family mattered more than all the treasure in the world. And then, decades later, the franchise received an acclaimed reboot. Have you watched that version as well, or only the original? What about the movie? Let me know in the comments below what you have watched, which version left the greatest impression on you, and which characters or episodes remain your favorites. That is all for today. Have a great day, and I'll see you lads next time. Adios.